Welcome in everybody to episode 3 of Empire Sports Talk. I'm John Downey. I hope everyone out there is doing well and enjoying life because that's what it's all about. Let's get into it today. We're going to speak with David Resnick, who is a G League expert, and most of you may hear him on the call for the Westchester Knicks. David was kind enough to join the program as he not only works for the Westchester Knicks, but is the play-by-play announcer for the G League and Iona University Gales men's and women's basketball. Stay locked in as David talks about life in the basketball world and what it's like to call and live games in New York City.
All right, first we'll start with the bio. So, hi everybody, I got David Resnick here, who is currently the play-by-play announcer of the Westchester Knicks, the G League affiliate of course, the New York Knicks. I know you also do the G League Finals, which I think is pretty cool because that's the championship. And also, I know you do the Iona Gals men's and women's basketball team, so I like to get into how you do like the pro side and the college side. So, I guess the first question I got for you is growing up in like the New York area, how do you feel that influenced like your career path, or did it have anything to do with it? Maybe nothing.
Yeah, I think in a way it had maybe like a subliminal um, way of guiding me towards where I wanted to go. Um, Obviously, there's a ton of pro teams and a ton of sports and a ton of opportunities to watch and consume and attend. And not only that, but it's produced and broadcasted by some of the best ever and national figures. And if you were to go even currently or over time, not only is New York filled with legendary figures that the fan bases are attached to and announcers that are beloved, but you're also looking at people that do national work. And I think being around that and watching that, it was definitely a blueprint. I don't know the moment where I decided or thought I wanted to go into the broadcasting industry. I joke that I don't have the 3-year-old watching a game and talking into a tape recorder, or sitting on the sideline of a game that I'm participating in, announcing, or people getting annoyed at me. Guess I won't be stay quiet, and that's a typical trope and an understandable trope of many people in the industry. For me, I think it's just being a sport fan, being aware and understanding that the game is more than just the players, but it's the referees and the PA announcers and the broadcasters. So always had a holistic approach of that. And then I would say being in New York or growing up in New York definitely led me towards thinking about broadcasting because of just how many great collegiate programs are within driving distance. So I think a combination of all those things made me attuned to the fact that I could have a career in this type of space.
Right. So maybe you can get into like your journey of becoming the Westchester Knicks announcer. I know you do the G League Finals and the Iona games. Can you take me through how you got there?
Sure. So the G League stuff is definitely connected, and then I would say Iona is something separate. I'll start there first. I grew up in New Rochelle. Iona's in New Rochelle, and I think um, I think when you're reaching out to places or people, naturally you want to have some type of hook, or you want to have some type of connection. For example, we don't know each other. We've been talking now for 5 minutes. That's the extent of our relationship. But you presented yourself as a student. And I think one of the great things in this industry is that people are willing to give back or pay it forward. Um, and I certainly know what it's like to be a student and reach out to people for advice or guidance or a project. And I know how tough it could be sometimes to get people to respond to you or give them your time. And so, for this conversation, just saying that you were a student working on a project, like that was enough for me to respond and talk. So with Iona, for instance, it was easy to say, this is a team that I grew up watching and knowing about and following in their NCAA tournament runs or or runs to the NCAA tournament. I didn't embellish. I'm not some super fan. I didn't grow up in like some Iona Gales onesie or something like that. But it's just a hook and a connection. And I had read in the local paper about how they were expanding their coverage and adding ESPN3 and eventually Plus broadcasts. And it was just every 6 months, just reaching out and just saying, I'm local. This is what I've done. This is what I can do. And having other people around the program or who cover the program or who know the decision makers to try to put in a good word and just mention my name. And it was 2 or 3 years of just emailing them every once in a while and not hearing anything back before they had an emergency need for a fill-in, and did one game back in 2018 and a partial schedule in 2019. And I think starting in 2020 became one of their main people. So that's just a little bit of a kind of a networking story of a small amount of perseverance of just being available and staying in touch and trying to present yourself as somebody that would be good for the job based off of your past and current work. The G League is a little bit different, but I think has some type of similar threads. The team was announced in the spring of 2014. By that point, I was almost 4 years out of college. I had a little bit of a resume and a little bit of a reputation in Westchester and the greater New York area. And they were playing in the Westchester County Center. And so I was probably a little too young or a little too unqualified for the job. But I presented myself as this person who's worked in the building. I'd done a ton of high school championship events there and other things, and basically was trying to present myself as the candidate that was going to take the county center kind of into the next phase. That they've had all these great basketball events, and now the Westchester Knicks are coming, and I've already done all these great events in the county center, so I want to continue to do it. There were some other kind of twists and turns to it, and some connections, and how a current colleague at a different job had a connection to the radio station that was ultimately doing the hiring, and all these different things came together to help me out. And now 10 years later, I'm still with the team doing their games. And then the connection just with the G League Showcase and doing the G League Finals was just being in the league and starting out in the league. And it certainly helps being in New York. The league offices are in New York. They would, I think, check in as much as they could on the new franchise. We were team 18 at the time. We aired or we still do, on MSG. So I think we had a lot of eyes on us, just being in New York, being on MSG, being a new franchise. It allowed league officials to, jump in a taxi or cab. Well, that's the same thing, but a taxi or an Uber or, just drive to the Westchester County Center after work. They might have lived in the area. So all to say, we had a lot of eyeballs and traffic. And when they had an opening for some of the league-wide G League events, I was somebody, I think, just based off proximity and recency bias, that they asked to help out with those events, and that's grown over the last decade as well.
Right. Staying with that, I was going to ask, that was actually my next question, like the atmosphere of those games. Does it feel like a pro game, or is it kind of a more so, not like per se, like not really many people show up, but does it have a good following there in Westchester?
So I would say that in terms of the following, a Saturday night game gets more fans than a Tuesday night game, right?
Yeah.
When you are targeting yourself to family or kids, or the accessibility of games, clearly non-school and non-work nights will have better attendance.
Hmm.
And when the building is filled and when it does have people there, one of the great features of the Westchester County Center is that it doesn't take a lot of people to make it sound very big. So those are great moments. And when the team has great games or great dunks or exciting plays, when there's a good crowd there, you could definitely sense it. I think the feel of the pro game is sitting courtside to these adult men playing basketball, and if the NBA is, the best 400 players, arguably we're looking at the next best 400 players. And to, the untrained eye, um, they look as good as NBA players because many of them are. I
Hmm.
think if you were to take out, an adage that was basically, said to me or related to me is that if you look at an NBA roster that has 15 standard NBA contracts and then three two-way contracts for a total of 18, there's very little difference on the roster between 12 and 18 or 13 and 18 or 14 and 18. All of that's to say is that once you get past your starters, once you get past your all NBA players and your all stars, the people that fill roles or fill benches or fill out rosters, there's a very little difference between them and the folks that we get to see every night, in the G League. And so you could just sense that level of play more so um, than excuse me than the crowd itself. The other thing I would say is a couple things. One, the team's only been around for 10 years, so it takes a while to build up a following. I think the
Hmm.
nature of the G League, that you don't have players that are with a team or a franchise for multiple years. You kind of have to learn a new roster, which what college fans are now experiencing with NIL and the transfer. And the other thing I'd say is because Westchester and the tri-state is such a big pro market town, um, and I'm guilty of this growing up too. I never really had a college that I followed. They're not very good at following secondary sports, meaning
Hmm.
like Army football is somewhat popular and maybe St. John's basketball when they're good, but there's a lot of college programs within driving distance of New York City that doesn't have a true following because of all the pro franchises. So it's a pro sport town. And yes, the Westchester Knicks are a pro team, but they are a minor league. Um, and so I don't they've been good and they've made playoff runs and they've been successful. I just don't know what the I don't know what the ceiling is for fan support, which I'm not exactly sure is the origins of your question, but all of it's to say that when people do show up on the weekends, it's definitely a great atmosphere.
Yeah, it makes sense. I'll switch gears a little bit. So I call like the Marywood basketball games, and sometimes I struggle with like preparing beforehand. Like I don't feel like I feel like I write down too many things and I wind up not using it. So maybe you can take me through like what you do like to prep, and then like once what you do once you get to the arena to like help yourself be fully prepared before a game.
So not using things is actually a good sign. Um, you essentially you shouldn't be. If you're using all of your material, it probably means that you don't have enough, or it probably
Hmm.
means that you haven't um, done enough research or spoken to enough people or gathered enough things. Um, Preparation can follow a lot of different paths. And I kind of run the gamut where I can do a high school game one day where I'm relying on coach interviews. Maybe there's been some articles written in the local paper, and maybe they have some stats up on a website, and maybe there's a league association that maybe has a little bit of history.
Hmm.
So that's preparation. That's really based upon a lot on coach conversations, and gathering that type of information, um, not organically, but kind of one to one, and relying a lot on the coaches to let you know who these players are. And the more you cover an area and the more you cover a team and the more that you're based in a certain spot, you kind of have a better idea of the history. Oh, that kid's a younger brother, that's a cousin. I know this name, where do I know him from? And obviously the more of a rapport that you build up with a coach, the more they're willing to trust you with information. Um, Either that they know that you're going to sanitize their comments and they could speak freely and they know that you're not going to burn them. College and pro is just a different world in terms of game notes and access to stats and hit like all the things that you would want to know are available to you. Um, and so I think there's a couple of ways to prep where you want, in my opinion, the board or the chart in front of you to be uh like all of the information that you gathered synthesized. Meaning I have all these stats and I have all these notes and I have all this prep. Like, what does it mean?
Hmm.
And I think the information that ultimately like ends up on your chart should be the basic information, but also like what does it mean, or take it to the next step. Because in theory, your audience and the fans have access to all of the information that you've just gathered from the internet. And so reading off stats or reading off numbers doesn't quite have the same impact today that I think it might have generations ago, when it's possible that you as the broadcaster would only have access to the information. Which is why I have, over the last decade, gone um, I've shifted my thoughts to providing information in the broadcast that I feel like only I have. And the type of access that I have and the type of information that I have that makes my position unique is that I get to talk to all these people, right? I
Hmm.
get to talk to coaches, I get to talk to players, I get to get quotes or perspectives or insight outside of the bounds of the game notes, outside of the bounds of the stats that everybody has access to. So, to your original question, that prep beforehand is all of those things, as much information that I can gather and I can put on my charts in a way that I could understand and remember. And what I then do at the game prior is try to supplement any of the stuff that I've found with firsthand quotes. So as I'm prepping, I actually keep a post-it or a notepad of all the questions that are developing as I'm prepping.
Hmm.
All of the things that I find in box scores, or why isn't this player playing? Like, what happened to him? He disappeared from the box score for 5 days, or why is he not playing as well? Or lineup questions or strategy questions, things that I would say my high school prep, I'm talking to a coach and then preparing, and then for college and pro, I'm preparing and then talking to people. So I try to use that time before the game, even if it's a player that's been injured who's coming back, just to ask them like, how you feeling, or what percentage. It's somewhat of a silly question, but fans can't get that anywhere. And so
Hmm.
I try to focus my time as much as possible on getting information and having information that nobody else does, because ultimately I think that's where the real value is in prep, and the real value in presenting that information in the broadcast. So beforehand is gathering and synthesizing, putting things on my chart that are distilled down from the research. At the game is speaking to as many people as I possibly can, and then also like at the end taking a minute to kind of just sit with the information, take the quotes that I've written down or the quotes that I remember, and putting it on my chart and connecting it to the things that I already have.
Yeah, that was helpful because I always write like notes out, and then I do ask questions to like the coach and like some of the players, but then like sometimes during the game I'm like, oh, should I say that now? Like when should I use it? So I kind of feel like what you're saying is like use it whenever basically, but it's always good to have extra because you're just being prepared for that.
Yeah, I would say something like this. Let's just say you have a quote from a coach, right? That's like his team up a lot. A quote for when they're, this is a bad scenario, but I think it explains what I'm trying to get at. A quote from a coach in a blowout, his team winning. A quote from a coach when it's a close game, and a quote from a coach when his team is losing.
Hmm.
If they're blowing out the other team, two out of those three quotes are completely irrelevant.
Right.
Right. So you're only using a third of the quotes. You're only using 33% of the information that you gathered.
Hmm.
If there's a stat of it's his seventh straight game with a double double and he doesn't get a double double, now you
Yeah.
might not use that stat. Or if he's close to 9 rebounds, you might say, oh, he fell 1 rebound shy of that stat.
Hmm.
But you have to let the game dictate the type of information that you are looking to provide. In close games, listen to a game in the third and fourth quarter. Like, they're just talking game. They're not giving you the other information. They're focused on the game because that's what
Hmm.
takes precedent. compared to a blowout where there's the term like emptying your chart, where, yeah, you're probably talking about more stories or introducing things. There might be a story of an opposing team that is just so good, and you have to use like editorial control with that, or that no matter the situation, no matter the score, no matter if that player even got into the game, it's such a great story that you have to say it. But most of the time, there isn't a story like that. So if you've prepared, if it's a basketball game and a team only played 7 players and you have notes on player 8, 9, and 10, well, there's another example of how your preparation isn't used. And so it brings your percentage down.
Hmm.
Um, the game should take center stage, and the preparation and the information that you have should complement it. It shouldn't kind of get in the way. Um, I always, this is like a really esoteric, like nerdy reference, but when I was growing up and we were in social studies, we had these things called like DBQs, document-based questions or document-based essays. And the teacher always used to say, like, answer the question with like what you think the correct answer is, and then you supplement it with the documents to prove your points. You
Hmm.
don't let the documents um, influence your answer. So, like, the game is in front of you, and let the game be the game. And when there are moments to bring in other stats or stories or relevant quotes, that's when you do it. But you don't let the prep run the game.
Makes sense. Yeah. Okay. I forgot to ask you this before, but I have two questions left. One is, what is your favorite moment thus far with the Westchester Knicks?
So I'll answer it, I guess, maybe I'll give two. I'll give two. Little bonus to your question. So Jimmer Fredette played a whole season with the Westchester Knicks. And so that was like 50 games of an amazing moment because he's a legitimate star. It
Hmm.
was like watching Tebow Mania. It just like, again, it's all relative. But before every game, he was signing. After every game, he was signing. He would walk into the locker room at halftime, and it's just he handled it so amazingly. And again, it's a lot easier to do, let's say, 5,000 fans compared to 20,000 fans. But it was just there are better players that have been in the league, right? Or more accomplished players, or 10-year NBA vets with champions in the league. And so he doesn't necessarily have the best resume, even though after that moment he got back into the league, became a big scorer in China, played USA 3-on-3, etc. But there's never been a bigger like star. There's never been somebody with that type of like magnitude of star power. So just being around that all year was pretty special. Last year, at the G League Showcase, which is like a mid-season event where all the teams go to one location and they play against each other in a little bit of a tournament. The Westchester Knicks played in the Showcase Cup final. It was a game on ESPN, and I did sideline for. I've never seen a G League team play so hard and so connected and so tough. The game, it was an amazing game. I think
Hmm.
if you strip away the jerseys and the location and like what it was, and you just called this like a championship basketball game, and it wasn't like diminished by being in the G League or this or that or the other, it was such an incredible game, an athletic competition. They played so yeah, it played so hard. The energy from the team was incredible, and it's just like you just watched a bunch of guys just lock into their profession and their job for 2 hours, and they then ended up winning it. And I just, I'm connected to the Westchester Knicks, but I was doing it as a neutral kind of sideline reporter. But just even though it wasn't at home, even though it wasn't a championship at the end, but just seeing the way that they competed and came together, and all these guys who had other aspirations. I wanted to get back to the league. I wanted to earn a bigger contract overseas, but just for those 2 hours to lock in and play that the way that they did, that was a pretty special thing to be around.
Definitely pretty cool moments. The last question I have, you gave a lot of information already, but what's that like one piece of advice you would give to someone like me, aspiring, like someone that wants to get into the sports media field, especially in New York, because I know that's kind of its own beast compared to other cities. Like, what's that one specific piece of advice you would give?
Sure. So, one piece of advice, I'm going to give a few. I'm going to disregard your question. First thing is never say last question, because if I say something that triggers another thought, you want to have the ability to ask it, right? Not that I'm going to hold you to it in this forum, but if somebody said, well, you said last question, I have to go. You never want to do that. You want to leave things open. Um, so that's not what you asked, but I would say two things are really important for somebody in college and learning. First thing is to listen back and critique or listen or watch back to your work with a critical ear. It doesn't have to be the entire game, but a 5 or 10 minute stretch. If it's basketball, media timeout to media timeout. If it's baseball, half inning that you thought either went really well or really poorly. And I think the habits that you create now, as you prepare for a game, do a game, and kind of the post game or the post mortem work that you do, is the type of habit building that you're going to need as a professional. So 2 days out, you build your chart. One day out, you watch film. The day of the game in the morning, you go over your quotes. The next morning after the game, you listen back, or it's in the car ride home, or whatever it is. I just think that the habits that you build now will stick with you, and so you want them to be good habits. And I have good habits, and I have bad habits, many of which I would say crystallized when I was in college and just first starting out. So I would think very hard about your habits. And I would think very hard about never knowing which moment, as you're doing a game, is going to be a moment that you're going to want to keep. Meaning, did I just do an open on camera that I thought was amazing and I didn't put a tie on, or I didn't do my hair that day? Or I forgot to put on my makeup. And so this thing that I really wanted to use, but it doesn't look like I want it. Or this game that I thought was going to be a blowout, so I didn't really prep, and then it turns out to be that the ninth guy hits the game-winning shot, and I've got nothing on him or her.
Hmm.
So while you shouldn't take yourself too seriously and have fun and joke and create like a nice aura around the broadcast, I think you should take the job seriously. And you just never know how many opportunities that you're going to get. And so you should put as much into each one as you can, as your life and your schoolwork and the other things that you do allows you to put in. The second thing I'd say, and it relates to being in New York, and it's something that I've been thinking about more as of late, as I've gotten into a few different things and been exposed to different pieces of the industry. You're a broadcaster that covers sports. So like, what else can you do with that skill set? And there are
Hmm.
a lot of colleges, within driving distance of New York City that need PA announcers, that need stat keepers, that need stat callers. And so as you're trying to build your resume in the broadcasting world, and let's say you want to do play-by-play and you're trying to get as many play-by-play games as you can, there are still going to be empty dates on your calendar that you're looking to work or
Hmm.
looking to meet people or network or simply, from a matter of fact standpoint, make money. And so on days that you're not broadcasting, what else can you use your skill set for to earn a paycheck? And, I would encourage you, both, I guess, specifically and the you of anybody in college, is for a game that you're not broadcasting or for a sport that your TV or radio station does not broadcast, go try to work that game or learn about the game from like the SID or athletic communication standpoint.
Hmm.
I can't tell you how many times there's a story that goes, I work on the basketball game, inputting stats. The broadcaster called in the morning And my boss knows that I'm trying to get into sports broadcasting. And in a pinch, I was able to move from the scores table as the stat operator to the other side of the table to call the game. And now you've called a game, and then you fill in more, et cetera. Like this industry definitely builds upon each other. A lot of it doesn't make sense. A lot of it isn't a meritocracy, and from the sense of it's easier to just find somebody that you know than to necessarily find the best person for the job. So the more things that you can do at a scores table, the more people, therefore, you then meet, the more people that understand what your actual career aspirations are, I think is helpful, especially as you're starting out. So learn every position that you can within the context of what your skill set would be valuable for.
All right, I really appreciate this. It means a lot being able to like learn from someone that from you. You have a lot of knowledge, so it was very helpful. Thank you. I appreciate this.
My pleasure being here.
Yeah, it was awesome. As I talked to a few different people and like they're in different roles, which I was trying to get. So like this is perfect for play-by-play because this would be my dream to do some kind of play-by-play, either like baseball, any sport really. Just given like the chance to do it would be awesome. So thanks again.
What kind of stuff do you do in school?
I do the basketball games. So we basically like if we have double headers, we switch. It's like I would do play-by-play one game, color the other game. I'm starting to get into like sideline because I'm interested in that as well. So I want to get some practice with that. We also do like we have like the news show. So I've been sports anchor before, like the regular news anchor. So I've done a lot of different things, but obviously practice is most important.
Yeah, every rep's a rep, right?
Yeah.
So if they have you do news anchoring or news reporting or political coverage, um, every rep's a rep. So anytime that you're able to get in front of a mic, whether it's TV or radio, it counts for something.
Mhm.
And so definitely you should be in the point of like your life or career or whatnot. Just say yes to everything.
Yeah, that's what I've
Um,
been doing, everything basically, trying to at least.
yeah. While also, whatever it is that you need to take care of, work wise, academic wise, family wise, it's important to keep those things in balance and keep those things in mind. But yes,
Mhm.
anything that you're able to, reasonably say yes to or agree to, definitely that should be in some ways the focus of how you look at things.
Right. Yeah. All right. This was great. Thank you.
My
Have a good
pleasure.
day.
Anytime when you start doing basketball again, if you want to send like a clip my way, you got my info. So just send me an
Okay.
email and I'm happy to listen to it and give a few thoughts to help guide you to the
Mhm.
next time that you do it.
Great. Thanks. Yeah, we're starting up, I think, in like 2 weeks or so. So that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Empire Sports Talk. I want to thank David Resnick for taking some time out of his day to join the program. And I'm John Downey. Stay safe and make sure to tune in to the next episode.